Before we get into this episode of Games Here, I just want to bring to your attention that this game is rated M for mature and is not meant for children. All right, what's going on, folks? I am here with someone who is very terrible at video games because he makes Ryan look good.
That's not true. It depends on the game. It 100% depends on the game. If it's first-person shooter, we are equally awful. When it's Rocket League, I am the best, except for if you compare pros, then not at all. But very good. I'm very good at Rocket League. I do not hide the fact that I am the best, in at least in this apartment.
I don't know about that one, Michael. I've seen some.
I can guarantee you, I'm the best here.
I've seen some gameplay of you and Ryan playing CS:GO.
Oh no, first-person shooter, I'm awful. Yeah, I can barely aim, and like computer, like if I play like CPU training things, I'll probably lose. Yeah. So I 100% believe that for sure.
So Michael, the best way to improve, go play Ballistic Overkill with bots.
I like Ballistic Overkill, but I mean that game has unfortunately been. Actually,
funny enough, there's still people that play it. There's still there are still servers up that play on it. Believe it or not.
That's awesome. I want to play that. Okay, I like that game, but I use the ninjas so I can slice and dice and not shoot.
And so you can hide like.
No, that's a tactic. That's not
a tactic.
The invisibility, the invisibility of that character is compensated for the fact that he has no armor. So it's cool. There's a benefit and a negative, pros and cons. It's fine. But I just like to slice and dice, and it's really fun for me for someone to like snipe me, and then I go behind him and like, guess who? And you just smack them. So
obviously, joking aside, Michael, why don't you tell people like some of your general interests besides Rocket League, not related to gaming?
Oh, just general stuff.
Yes, like life stuff outside of Linux and all the other typical stuff.
Outside of Linux.
You do have a life outside of Linux, and I know this.
Well, I mean, sort of, I guess.
As far as what you find entertainment in.
Right. Okay. So I am a really big comic book person. I really love comics. I also love movies, especially ones based on comics. I also like getting phone calls directly in recordings.
Which I'm totally leaving in.
Dang it. Muting that for the future's sake. So I really like movies. I don't know if I'm a movie buff or anything, but I definitely do like them. But it's the main focus is comic book movies and sci-fi and fantasy and that sort of stuff. I do love that sort of stuff. But comic books are probably my most, I wouldn't say enthusiast thing, but pretty much like that. I think there's every type of comic book, if you can imagine, I would probably like it. Just because, I mean, the stories might not be the best stories, but any kind of genre, I'm good with most genres. Even stuff that's off the wall, weird, things.
So things like Priest or something along those lines, which are totally off the wall.
Yeah, for sure. Image Comics, it doesn't have to be Marvel and DC. It could be Image. It could be other independents. Like a lot of one of the coolest things about it is the stories that it's funny because a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows that people are really into started as a comic book. The Watchmen movie, comic book. The 300 movie, comic book. The Walking Dead TV show is comic book first, and all these things. And in fact, even the Ninja Turtles were a comic book first. Completely different kind of genre comic book, but still, that was a comic book first. Like so much stuff for decades have all started in comics and then moved over to these other mediums. So when people like mention a show, they'll be like, "Have you ever heard of this show?" And I'm like, "No, but I've read the comic," and stuff like that. So that's one of the reasons I love comic books, is that it's a medium that is open to any kind of content, any kind of story, but it also gives a, a value of art, because I am a designer and artist type person. So when like that's why it's like a great combination. It's amazing artwork, provided that you're not talking about the 70s and 80s, but amazing artwork combined with great storytelling, and that is something that I am a big fan of.
Well, my question about the 70s and 80s, so not a Todd McFarlane fan, art style was?
Oh no. Todd McFarlane is great. I think that his style of art is great. I was more talking about the 70s in terms of like the 60s and 70s retro style, which is good as a style. It's just not my preference. I think
Gotcha.
Todd McFarlane changed the game when it comes to art, especially with like Spawn and things like that. And his Spider-Man work was fantastic. So I think that he's one of the examples of like pushing art forward in that space.
Well, I mean, he is the one that gave us the Venom art design.
True. And he did a lot of cool poses for Spider-Man. Like there was a couple times where there was this interview with him that he said like why he made Spider-Man the way he did. He said he wanted to just make cool looking art that we could make the story fit around this art. Versus the other way, it's like the story always comes first, and like why can't they have like a symbiotic relationship with that, and which is also kind of funny that he made Venom, or he not made Venom, but he made the cool design of Venom and stuff like symbiotic. Anyway, that's a bit going into inside baseball on when it comes to that stuff.
Never. So, ironically, the game that I chose for you was, I don't know if you've ever actually read these comics. These are based on...
I had not, and when I played the game, it made me want to read the comics.
Because these are of this game, which is Wolf Among Us, obviously, if you haven't read the title by now, is based off a series of comics / graphic novels, depending, use your typical geekdom and however you want to describe that.
Here, I'll tell you. This is my perspective of the graphic novels versus comics. Some people don't like the word comic because it sounds like it's it's not cool or whatever. Like, I don't care about that. There is a distinction. A graphic novel is a self-contained story in comic form, but it is a trade book. It's this specific story arc. Then a comic is more of like a broad generalization. So you wouldn't say the Spider-Man graphic novel. You would say Spider-Man comic. Then if you want a particular story like the Clone Saga of Spider-Man, that is a graphic novel.
Graphic novel.
Or Maximum Carnage, that too. Like all of these types of things. Like that's my distinction.
And that's the actual graphic novel, because this is the entire Maximum Carnage.
Nice.
Back when I was really big into comics. So for those that want to know, that, what was that, 91, 90? That was pretty early 90s.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was thinking 93, but it could be any of those.
All I remember is the Maximum Carnage Super Nintendo game. That's what got me into that. Adult story, like super adult story. Like,
yeah, Maximum Carnage is crazy. So I'm a
literally
big fan of Spider-Man, but Carnage is also a crazy person. So there's so many great stories in comics that the thing about comics is people who are not familiar with the value of them dismiss them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I like all these different, things, taking comics and doing the true adaptations and stuff, or doing what Marvel does and make a new story based on the core concepts of other stories. So like, that's why I love Marvel movies. It's not because they are staying true to the comics. They don't stay true at all to the comics, like almost ever. But that's okay, because they're writing new stories with these characters and with these settings and stuff like that. So not only do I get the value of like seeing the characters come to life, I also get to see them in a new light, which is great.
This episode of Game Sphere is brought to you by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean recently announced their new Managed MongoDB service, which is a fully managed database as a service. With Managed MongoDB, you can focus more on building scalable, high-performance apps and less on maintaining the database. Simply offload your MongoDB administration to DigitalOcean and let them handle the provisioning, managing, scaling, updates, backups, and security of your clusters. DigitalOcean built this partnership with MongoDB Inc., and together they have ensured that you will get access to all the latest releases of MongoDB document database as they become available. As a listener of the GameSphere podcast and a member of the DLN community, you can get started for free. Actually, better than free, because DigitalOcean is giving you $100 credit when you go to do.co/DLN-Mongo. Again, go to do.co/DLN-Mongo to get started with $100 free credit on DigitalOcean's new managed MongoDB. We want to thank DigitalOcean for sponsoring this episode of GameSphere. Yeah, exactly. And so these particular comics, which are the Fables comics, are based, or graphic novels are based around essentially story tales, which you would normally get, Big Bad Wolf, Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White, all that kind of stuff, is actually a projects of New York City. Essentially, is they don't actually name it, but that's really what it is. It's a section of New York that is essentially cordoned off for all the fables to live, and they live in the normal human world. But certain ones, like, because you play Bigsby, or the Big Bad Wolf, in this particular game, and you are a peacekeeper, I guess would be the best.
Sort of a police officer, but there is. I think he's the only one.
Yeah. So that's the gist of it. This is a 6-episode series. Michael has only played the first one. So,
I played the first episode. I played a little bit of the second one, but I didn't finish the second one. So, but I did finish the first one, and it is definitely a really interesting story. And I think the art style of this game is interesting too.
Yeah. So for me, it's basically a motion comic. You've seen a lot of these kind of in like DVD formats and that kind of stuff. Whereas one of them that comes to mind is some artwork by Ashley Wood, who did a lot of the Metal Gear Solid comics and stuff that was out. A very kind of a surrealist art style, but they did motion comics for that. There's been X-Men motion comics. There's been, tons of this kind of art style, but this is more animated. Like it feels, it's this weird mix of like a live interactive comic that like live action movie kind of deal.
Yeah, it seems pretty accurate for that. Yeah,
and it's because it's not the traditional like this is anime kind of way. So the art design is so you see a lot of like the line designs around the face and like that kind of stuff that you would normally see in the comics. So,
right.
Like
kind of reminds me of like cell shading or whatever.
Yeah. So like you would see a lot of those other kind of comic book art designs in the actual character designs for the game, which is not something that's done very often. And something I actually really like because, being the comic book nerd, the character outlines, the thicker the lines and all the other stuff, like they're depending on the artist, they'll have different like outlines for characters and how they shape and around the face and like these little, it's just little details like that I
different
love.
Styles for like a lot of things people think about, that art, there's an art style for comics, and there is, but there's also many different art styles, and every artist is unique in how they do stuff. And some artists are highly skilled, but I'm not a fan of their style. Other times where their style is so strong that they don't have to put as much emphasis on the art style itself, or the quality of it, because they're doing it more in a subdued style, such as paying homage to the 60s style but making it in a modern way. Those are really cool types of art too. Or like, for example, there's even some styles where they purposefully limit the amount of art that they put into it, and they force themselves to deal with a smaller option of art in the box of what they allow themselves, such as The Walking Dead, where it's all black and white the entire time.
The Crow comic.
The Crow as well. Or even if you go back to the Ninja Turtles, where it's all black and white except for the headbands.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman, for that one.
Yep. Although to be clear, if anybody wants to go read the Ninja Turtles, it is nothing like the show and or anything else about it. Yeah.
The first movie is the closest you'll get to the original source material.
Yes. And you're still miles off.
Yeah, but I mean that's about as close as you're gonna get in any live action format.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I guess we can get into this and talk about some of the actual game. We've talked about art style. This is a choice driven game. As this plays out, you can obviously see the art style and stuff is very, very comic inspired.
Mm-hmm.
So right now you're in the back of a taxi with your character who is the big bad wolf, Bigsby. Very human. I will say that plays into a lot of the character choices. But we'll get
Are you talking about the glamour based stuff?
Yeah, the glimmer type facade that they give.
Yeah.
That is definitely a element.
Is he always that way? Like, because I mean, in terms of like the stuff I saw, he never wasn't a human looking.
It's an illusion.
I know he's not actually human, but I mean, like he's always using glamour. Or
yeah. No, it comes into play later in the game as far as that. There are certain situations and elements that change.
There's a part where he kind of turns a little bit wolf-ish, but not like fully blown wolf.
Oh yeah, like there's sections where he goes full bore and you'll play it. Yeah, I forgot to mention this is very rated M as far as language and stuff.
And also plots sometimes.
Yeah, rated M. Go see an ESRB rating if you want to know what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously you have
pick one at random.
You have a timer.
I'm looking at a 3-foot toad.
So I'll be a sarcastic novel idea.
That's a problem.
So the farm is essentially people who break the law, more or less.
The people who refuse to wear glamour or can't.
They're bleeding me dry, mate. The quality of the spout goes down, but the rates keep climbing up. Do you have any idea how much it costs to have an entire family in glamour?
Let's see. Not my problem.
You're the one risking your entire family getting shipped off.
So I do like the voice acting. I will say, like,
yeah,
for me.
Yeah, I agree. The voice acting is quite good. The art style is quite good. It's there's a lot of cool stuff about it. It's like a 2D style in a 3D form. I like it.
Language.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just gonna stand there. I mean, the first interaction you have is,
And what exactly do you want me to do? I want you to throw the fucking woodsman out of here. Drunk shit. He's been going on like
so the woodsman, it's Snow White, all that stuff.
This is the last straw, Big B. He has to
go. Which one do I want? Knowing me, I'm just gonna say do it yourself.
This is something you should be doing. Oh yeah, that'd be a fair fight. You're the sheriff, Big B, and the man's clearly disturbing the peace.
With that, does that choice surprise you though, Michael?
You're not worried about
no.
No.
History,
but I'm not worried.
See, the part of what I would choose is very different, and it's kind of funny because my style of playing this game does not fit the character I'm playing.
Michael tries to be nice, and unfortunately, the character
is no nice.
It's either disregard or more disregard.
Yeah, it's disregard or completely go the hardcore route.
Yeah.
And my style, my preference is I'm the chill person. Like I don't really want to. If there's an option for be chill, I pick that option. But his form of chill is like none. There is no chill. So you're either super hardcore or just dismissive.
And so we've talked a little bit about what you liked. Obviously, you mentioned the art style, the way things are done. the interaction, like the quote unquote gameplay, is very straightforward. There isn't a lot to it.
Right.
Let's be real. Let's see. Do I want to just open it or kick the damn thing open?
You're gonna kick it open anyway, aren't you?
No, never.
No, I mean, like, I think he automatically kicks it open.
So,
Right.
obviously, this is the gameplay loop. It's literally just gameplay prompts and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Had enough?
So, Michael, let's talk about the story that you did portion that you did play. Pros version so far.
Pros of the game is that basically I like the story and I like the concept, but if I'm honest, I'm not a fan of the game. I'm not a fan of the gameplay because this gameplay is what's it called where it's this, you know,
QTE. It's very prompt based.
yeah, quick time, yeah.
And
I can't stand QuickTime.
well, I was gonna say I definitely agree that the gameplay is simple at best. Oop! Oh, as I
Missed it.
Yep. Nope. Axeman. As he gets hit with his own axe. Anyway,
Yeah.
what exactly is it besides the QTE stuff that you didn't really care for, though? Yeah.
The gameplay is too simple to me. I like to have complicated gameplay and difficult gameplay and that sort of stuff.
A little misunderstanding that
Mhm.
turned into
You know.
a real shit show.
Yeah. Well, what's is funny because originally when I asked you what you wanted to play, because I knew you like comics, I knew that obviously.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the start of a shitty night.
What I did not know is that you didn't, and
All right.
quote you, I like a focus on story. So that was the reason I made this recommendation.
Yeah, I like story,
Whatever you'd like.
but I want the story to like. So here's the problem: if the gameplay was
I don't
simple,
want to add any difficulty to
but
your night.
also had a story, like for example, Mass Effect, you still have to do something in the game, but also the story is very important. I think that's really cool. The problem with this game is that the gameplay is almost irrelevant,
That about cover it, hun?
and the choices are irrelevant. Like that part to me, when it pops up and it says they will remember that. No, they won't.
And this is where you kind of see the big bad wolf show up.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's
Other than that part,
do know the husband's not actually dead.
right? He can take a lot.
Yep. So I get what you're saying with the QTEs. It's a, if you like narrative, as you can tell, still alive. If you like narrative focused, like the focus of the game is narrative, then this is gonna be more important to you. So like the gameplay is gonna not matter as much.
I'm just kidding.
From the from the sounds of it, you're more of a,
Your eyes?
you prefer more a mix, a better mix.
Supposed to do that.
Well, I mean that is part of it, but the thing about I feel about this game is that if you want the story of this game, you can just watch it as a movie, and the amounts of value you get from the gameplay is the same.
Let me help you.
Like I know it's like really just being napped down on this.
That makes two.
I like the
I guess it's a
story,
good thing fables are hard.
but I don't like as a game. So it made me want to watch it as a full movie or something like that, or play it or watch or like read the comics and stuff like that. So like it's a concept that I like. I think is very cool, but as a game, it seems like a cash grab because it doesn't have any kind of gameplay value. Like when I play a game, when I love a game, it's because there's a lot of replayability. I don't even think there's playability here.
It's to you, it's more of an interactive movie.
Yeah, it's an interactive movie, but I'd rather not interact. If I'm just going to watch a movie, I'm just going to watch a movie, you know? Just because, especially, okay, if it's basic interaction and it's just, you know, point and click adventure type, that's fine. I'm good with that. But needless, pointless, quick time events, not a fan.
Not a fan of the QTE based events, huh?
Sorry.
Mm-mm. Well, just because it's like trying to force interaction where it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
And that part is kind of annoying.
Yeah, it's one of those things where
Thank you.
if you're not a fan of the QTE way of interaction, that's not going to be a game that you really enjoy, because especially if it's a story focused game, because it'll end up taking you out of the story portion of it. So it's this weird conundrum.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
So,
but I mean, in terms of like the story part, you know, the whole choice thing, there's at the very beginning,
Stop.
before the fight, just talking to Mr. Toad, and then also the fight. I did every variation of choice for Mr. Toad's interaction just to see what would happen to the outcome. And it's exactly the same for every single one. It's different, like reactions, different responses, but the outcome, the final section is always the same. And the fight is always the same, like no matter what choices are made. So that part is kind of like it just defeated the point once I realized that when it says he'll remember that is no, it won't.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, because it's weird because I've played further into like these binary choices like that. Is what you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, even if it had slight differences, you know, that's fine. It's just the final outcome of every single event of conversation is the same.
It's almost like they are game states that remember your choices that matter towards the end of the game, if that makes sense. Where it's like although
when you say end of an episode or into like farther
into the series. So it's
that still seems so limited in terms of like the choice stuff. Like, I don't know. It just seems like it seems like a lot of work to have very little value, or not value, but like very little reaction to that work, you know? Because in terms of like the content, I think the story is very good looking. And I think, it's not good looking. I think it is good looking, but I think the story is very interesting. And when I played through it, I did like it. And the twists and stuff are pretty cool. I do think that was cool.
It's one of those things where I think this isn't going to be in the same realm as like a David Cage game where the gameplay loop is going to be very similar to like this style of loop of game, as far as how the gameplay is more of an interactive movie, is not going to be in the same way that you're looking at it, where you're hoping that different scenarios play out differently based on the choices and the things that you make and all that kind of stuff, which is, I think, something that you might prefer that type of, if you do a QTE based game, because at least there's various outcome states to those interactions.
Yes. If my changes actually matter, I want them to show that they matter with relatively soon to when I make the decisions.
Yeah. So as an example, like the kind of game that you would probably prefer, because I recently just got done replaying Detroit. Very beginning of the game, literally the first, you have probably 8 different states that particular interaction can end in.
That is exactly what I'd want. If it's going to prove to me that they matter that fast, then I would like that kind of play. Even if the gameplay is limited, as long as the story-driven choices show that they matter immediately, And to me, it felt like the entire episode 1, it didn't matter.
This episode of GameSir is brought to you by Bitwarden. One thing we can do to protect ourselves is having a unique password for every online account we have. I've been using Bitwarden for a while now to do just that. And not only helps me keep track of my many passwords I now have, it includes a random password generator, and you can set the length of special characters and so much more. Better yet, it's 100% open source, receives third-party security auditing, and you can get started for free by going to bitwarden.com/DLN. Want some of their premium features like 1 gigabyte of file storage, Vault Health reports, or just to support the project? It starts at only $10 a year. Jump over to bitwarden.com/DLN to get started with your free account now. So I guess the real question is, where do you see yourself enjoying the potential of the story enough to actually play through the entirety of the season? Because
how many seasons are there?
It's only one season. It's only the 6 episodes.
Okay.
And
I will say the story is very good and very interesting, and I will probably finish it.
I will tell you one thing: there are different end states for the game.
Okay.
So when they say they'll remember it, they will. It's just, like I said, it's one of those.
It'll take a long time for them to remember.
It plays into the game differently.
Yeah.
So it's more of a slow burn as opposed to immediate interaction.
Yeah, that's interesting, but also they should be very clear about it.
Yeah. So like, and do know this is one of Telltale's like actual first. Was this their first game or second game after The Walking Dead? Either way, it's one of their very first games that they put out. So this is 2012-ish. So this is when episodic game series like this were very new.
Okay.
In the way that they were being made and presented and that kind of stuff. Then obviously there was the rise and fall of Telltale, and I'm not going to get into that, but it's definitely an interesting series. This got me into the graphic novel, comics, whatever. And I've enjoyed reading those and catching up on those.
Nice.
Like you, it's one of those games that if you're looking for instant gratification, it's not going to be that kind of game.
Right.
And that's a hard thing sometimes when you only have a limited time to invest in a game.
Right.
And again, because how long did the first episode take you? Not if you just played it.
My style of playing these kinds of games is,
well, you want to play every different outcome.
If you don't count the fact that I did the first 2 scenes every variation, I'd say probably like in 2 hours, hour and a half. But because I did that, and also because that intro never let you skip, probably took me about 3.5, 4 hours maybe.
That's kind of what I figured. So yeah, each episode is somewhere between, I would say, an hour or 2, depending on the content within the episode. It depends.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like Michael, if you like, I want to see like if there are different outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just play the game and go. I'm like, oh no. The first time it said Mr. Toe, remember that? Like, well, let's see if that's true. And I did every variation, and it kept saying that, and then the final thing that Mr. Toad says before you leave the conversation is the exact same through every single choice, and that made me go, okay, I get it now.
What they should have said is that he'll remember that interaction. It makes it a little different. Like
I guess
the wording.
To me, it's just kind of like what you said about Detroit, right?
Yeah.
That they show you that your choices matter instantly. Like that part is very interesting to me. Like I think that would be a very cool concept of a story-based game, but still, like, it doesn't have to be the greatest gameplay ever. I mean, I'm not expecting to have, this groundbreaking gameplay while also having a great story in every facet that still gives you multiple choice of everything. Like, that'd be great, by the way, but it doesn't have to be that. But at least if it's going to pick one of the other to do, if it's going to be a game, make the gameplay at least have some facet of value. Like to me, it felt more like I'm playing through this game in order to see the story, not because the game is a fun game.
Well, see, it's funny because these type of games I've always viewed in that light, though.
Oh, just in general?
No, for like these type of games, like the David Cage games, like Detroit and Beyond Two Souls and Heavy Rain and the Telltale style.
Yeah, I've heard Heavy Rain is mostly just story-based kind of thing.
The Telltale games style of storytelling, the episodic stuff. Other games that come to mind is like Life is Strange and those type of games. There's not a heavy gameplay element to it. There's a gameplay element, but the focus is on the story and the branching narrative, I guess, is what makes it unique, because there's an element of this is the playthrough that I had in comparison to somebody else. And I think that's, for me anyway, that's the draw of these games, like these type of games, where it's like you can have these weird minutia details that are totally different than somebody else's.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at your choices as we were going through it, and I recognized like I made at least half of those different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And well, that's just on the first episode, I'm assuming you've looked at.
Yeah. I mean, just for watching you, this one little segment of you doing it, because I completely did different choices on at least half. Like and also in a different like style. Your my style was to kind of try to make him chill, which, knowing that's I didn't even realize it was the big bad wolf until you said, and I sent you like a message after, and you're like, we got to record, and like, all right, cool. And I sent you the message saying something along the lines of,
he's always mean, basically.
He's always mean, and that's not my style, and I don't like that. And you said, well, he is the big bad wolf. I'm like, oh, that makes more sense. Yeah, okay. Like I didn't get that because they always called him Bigsby.
Yeah.
And the woodsman was like, okay, but someone could just be named the woodsman, and it not like, I didn't realize it was based on these fable stories, like the fairy tales and stuff, until you said big bad wolf. I'm like, oh, that changes a lot. Like they should have been more clear in the intro rather than the person on the radio thing be like, hey, guess who this person is.
A little more upfront about it.
Yeah. It's like they could have done like later in the thing, they give you the thing they should have done in the beginning. Like when you're in the mayor's office or whatever, deputy mayor's office, whatever, then you actually start learning about the fairy tale stuff, and you get the book and you see the stuff and you see the comparisons and whatnot. That should have been done in the beginning, and then I would instantly know what this is about. But once I figured out what it was about, once I was told what it was about, I realized that, okay, I will be interested in this because it's a new take on story, and a kind of a hardcore, modern take on stories that are, hundreds of years old in some cases.
Yeah, it's a hardcore, modern, very dark, and very dark adult.
A couple times I didn't realize not choosing would choose for me, and it always choose the worst thing. It chooses the worst.
It's usually the dot.
Yeah, it's the option that's always like, how could he be the worst possible reaction? And to me, that's not what I would do. I would be that's what I said to you, that I wanted to have the default be like the nice, go into the setting and say, I want to use the, Paragon style or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then but there is none. There is no Paragon style. So like, okay, sure, fair enough. But like, let me try to get something that's more relatively nice. And at one point, it actually almost made me go back and play it again. But then I didn't want to go through the setting. But where you have the choice to give Colin a drink or not. I didn't time it right and missed the choice, so he didn't give him the drink. I'm like, oh no! I'm like,
yeah, the timer element can, some people will hate because of the default response.
And also the timer is only like 5 seconds.
Yeah, at best, and sometimes it takes a little longer. Like some of the when you get like the 4 options, sometimes they're actually full responses that you have to actually read. And makes for an interesting experience sometimes.
Yeah,
but,
I could see that.
So, not the biggest fan of the gameplay loop, which I think is the biggest. Obviously, you're saying is the biggest weakness.
It's all about. I mean, it's definitely a preference thing. It's all about genre. It doesn't mean like just because I don't like it doesn't mean the game's bad. It's just like to me, the story is very interesting, and I will probably play it anyway because I do want to know what happens in the story. So I will still probably, go through the game, but I don't. The style of gameplay is not my thing, and honestly, it's hard for you to have picked a game in the first place because you have a reference of one, and that's not very helpful.
The reference of Rocket League.
Yeah, I have the reference of one game that is like nothing else. Like, what are you going to possibly get from this? So,
supposedly they're supposed to be doing a season 2 of this. If they did, this is obviously many years after this came out.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be interested in actually trying that?
But I thought Telltale was gone.
People buy rights for things.
Oh, I see. I got you. If there was a season 2 of this, would I play it? I would say yes if they gave it more like something to do other than watching. If it's just the same, I would not want to. Just because I wouldn't want to start it because then I'd want to know the story. I want to know how it ends, right? So this one is like, is this story good enough for me to keep playing? Yes. Is it good enough for me to start another? Actually, maybe. Now that I think about it, yes, maybe. It is a very cool story. So I will hope that if they do a second one, that it is a better gameplay style of some sort. And either way, I probably would still want to know the story.
So this does have you interested enough to look at the comics, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, almost instantly. Because I didn't know it was a comic base until you told me, and then it's like, then yes, I'm very interested.
So
yes.
There you go. If it didn't expand your view on gaming, or
right,
other than what you don't like,
it
expanded your comic book range.
Yes.
So
yes. It showed me this particular type of comic that I had not heard of, and I am definitely interested in checking that out.
So hey, look, pros either way.
Yeah, there is definitely a value that I have found from this game.